Kev, what do you think? Should we go ahead and dive in and get started here?
Yep.
All right. Awesome. So, welcome everyone. My name's Cameron. Um, Welcome to the first ever Cleantech Live. We're so excited to have you here. So I just wanted to give you a little bit of background about me and my relationship to Cleantech Rising, and I'll walk through a quick agenda of what we can expect here today, and then we'll jump into Zoheb's talk on vehicle to grid technology. So just a little background, 4 years ago, Zoheb and I, who went to college together, were having a conversation, and we had an interest in working together on a project. And we were both getting very interested in environmental protection, and also in the intersection of that and technology, and where those two things were meeting. And we really wanted to know and learn more about the different solutions that were being developed to deal with our greatest environmental problems. And so we started writing about them in an email newsletter, which we called Cleantech Rising. And here we are 4 years later. We've been publishing every other week since then. And, you know, over the last year, we've been thinking about how can we connect more with our audience and start to establish more of a human connection beyond our email inboxes. And that's sort of how Cleantech Live was born. So we're really grateful to have you here today. It means a lot. I want to say a big thank you to Kevin Wallner, our teammate who has been working with me for several months to get this set up. So thank you so much, Kev. Little golf clap for Kevin. Really appreciate you, man. And with that, I'll just jump into a quick agenda, and then we'll hop into our talk on vehicle to grid. So yeah, so we're going to hear from Zoheb. There's going to be an opportunity for you to type questions into the chat and hear from Zoheb related to the talk on vehicle to grid. From there, we're going to throw out a discussion prompt, and we're going to break everyone out into what are called breakout rooms here in Zoom. So you'll land in a room with 4 or 5 of us here and talk about the prompt. We'll then jump back into the main room, share takeaways. We'll do one more breakout section with a second prompt, and then we'll wrap things up together here. Post-show, we're going to do a little site tour of the online community that we're building called The Uprising. And for anyone that wants to hang out after one, we'll be happy to show you around and hang out with you a bit. So with that, I'm going to throw it over to Zoheb for our talk. Let's hear it, Zo.
Sounds good. I will share my screen with you. And just before I do that, I just want to say it's really great to move Cleantech Rising out of the email inbox and into more of a discussion forum. I think we need more of it, and Twitter is great. I've been active on there, but it doesn't completely suffice. So I think this is a nice way to do it, and nice to see everyone, a lot of people I know from different walks of life. So I'm really happy to be sharing with you something that I've been working on quite a bit. I've been excited about it for a number of years. When I first heard about it, it's this technology called vehicle to grid. It's and yeah, so now I'm working on this on a daily basis with a company called the Mobility House. So it's essentially a merging of these two industries, the automotive and energy industries, these two giant, massive industries that are coming together now because of both of them going through pretty massive disruption. Electric vehicle, or the automotive industry, going from internal combustion engines or ICE engines to electric vehicles because of what most of us here, I would imagine, understand this giant need to reduce carbon from all sectors of our economy, and the transportation sector being the largest emitter. And so there's a challenge that comes along with bringing about all these new electric vehicles. Pulling that much new energy from the grid in California is projected to increase the peak load by about 5 gigawatts, which is a massive increase. And so that can be mitigated if we do this intelligently. If we spread out the charging over time, utilize the solar that comes online with the, there's abundant new renewables coming online like solar and wind, utilizing those rather than increasing the peak when we will likely need much more of the carbon emitting type technologies like peaker plants, natural gas, coal, stuff like that. So that's what's going on with the electric vehicles. And now, because there is all this renewable energy coming online, there's a lot of what's called lunchtime power. There's a lot of solar energy available. We need to use that for what's called dinner time power. We need to trap that, store that, and use it later on. And therefore, we need a lot of storage. And batteries are quite expensive. And the value of those batteries, or the ability to store energy, is going up. And it's projected to go up quite a bit in the next 10 years because there's so much renewable energy coming online now. So in the electric vehicle industry, we got a massive new energy load, which could potentially be a massive challenge for the grid. And then on the energy side, we have a ton of cheap, carbon-free, essentially carbon-free, renewable energy coming online, but we need the storage capacity to ensure that we can use it at nighttime, and everyone comes home from work, well, traditionally, and turns on their microwave and TV and stuff, and that's when you really see the biggest spike. So we need to store that solar and wind. So the Mobility House and I myself see an opportunity in these two industries coming together. So right now we need to enable electric vehicles to come online. And so right now we're enabling what's called smart charging, which is mitigating the peaks of which electric vehicles tend to create because they're very high power sources. They pull at a very high power charge. So right now we're focusing on that, helping people flatten out their charging curves on a daily basis. But in the future, we see something called vehicle to grid happening, which is essentially vehicles that can not only charge and soak up the solar and abundant renewable energy, but they can actually put that energy back onto the grid when it's needed. And so most vehicles right now are only used 5% of the time, less than 95% of the time. So why not use the remainder of that time to store that energy when it's abundant? So you go to work, you plug in, you soak up that solar energy, and then you come home, the sun goes down, but everyone now is using more energy because they are turning on their microwaves and their TVs. Now you can take those electric vehicles and put energy back onto the grid. And you can actually make money by doing that because you're helping stabilize the grid. So here's the projection that we don't need to go too depth into. But what's called smart charging or energy management, which I talked about in the previous slide, it's also known as V1G, and then actually putting that energy back onto the grid. So discharging would be called V2G, vehicle to grid. So right now, the benefits that are projected from using electric vehicles as storage devices can be massive in the next 5 years, up to $15 billion worth of value, instead of having to create all these new batteries, set up the infrastructure to put these batteries in place. So yeah, a massive amount of value and at a deployment cost that's dwarfed. So I want to share with you guys a couple examples of what this looks like. And so we have a project going on in Amsterdam in the arena where the soccer team Ajax plays, and they do a bunch of concerts and things there. And so right now there's a 3 megawatt battery storage system there that provides energy storage if like Ed Sheeran's playing a concert, so if the lights go out or anything, there's backup power. But when there's not a concert, it can help stabilize the grid, sell energy back into the grid when it's needed, things like that. So now let's do some quick math here. And when I did this is what really made me go full into this industry. It's really shocking. So this 3 megawatt system here, that's what's needed to back up the grid. Well, if you have a Tesla Model 3, I drive a Tesla Model 3. It has about 75 kilowatt hours in its battery pack. You would need fewer than 100 Tesla Model 3s to provide the backup storage for this stadium. That's just like an unbelievable statistic. So in the future, you think 10 years ahead, you have a number of these, what's called bidirectional chargers, where the chargers allow these people who come to watch a soccer game, they come, they park, they plug in their car. You'd only need 100 of them plugged in and offering some sort of ability to provide backup power with their car to be completely backed up. So when you do that math, it really puts it in perspective how this is, really viable thing to happen. And so this is a chart of some of the ways that the vehicles can utilize their battery packs to buy into the grid services, like something called frequency response. And then that's the top chart. And then the middle chart is the power, the actual selling of the electricity into the grid, and then actually charging when it's needed, and then the revenue you can make from that. And then this last example I'll share with you is off an island off of Portugal. It's called Porto Santo, and I'm going to show you a video right now of what the Mobility House did there. And this video is really what made me fully commit and think, wow, this is a real viable future, and like this is a very cool future. And so what we did here on this island is put in a number of V2G chargers with electric vehicles, and what we saw is it was a significant reduction in carbon emissions. There was a heavy reduction of cost to the utility on the island. There was plenty of renewables, and so there was grid stabilization, and that's a typical setup with an island. You usually have a lot of solar, a lot of sunlight, and therefore a lot of solar, a lot of wind, and so you can use those renewables in this V2G fashion. So I'm going to start this video, and I'm going to put my volume on medium, but feel free to adjust. And it's about 2 minutes.
When we came up with the idea to solve the energy and grid issue on this island with electric cars, people thought we are crazy. And now it's proven that it can work.
I'm very impressed with it. It makes a lot of sense to use the surplus energy in a car when it's left overnight, when you're not using it, to supplement a grid. Essentially take an electricity network off fossil fuels and make it easier to make use of renewables.
With our technology, we bring together two industries in disruption. Porto Santo is the role model how electric cars can solve the energy issue on an island, so we can enable to become 100% renewable on the mobility and the energy sector.
What we have demonstrated here on the island is that the car can really play this role. All this being possible, of course, thanks to the Mobility House technology, who is managing all this information and making sure the grid is balanced.
To many Indonesian islands, it works, and it's gonna be the role model for the future of this planet.
right, so there you have it. I am finished with my presentation and want to make this a bit of a interactive dialogue. If there are any questions, feel free to type them in. Or if not, we can move this into more of a forum in which we can have a discussion together about what you just saw, other things you're excited about in clean tech, what are you thinking about these days? And I think we're planning to do a breakout session as well. Okay, all right. So biggest challenges facing this tech in terms of scaling. The biggest challenges in terms of scaling this tech, I would say, is a couple things. One is the regulatory hurdles. So we need to figure out how would these vehicles sell into the grid, just like solar figured out how to do net energy metering of if you have a solar installation on your rooftop, the utility has to purchase that electricity from you. So all that regulatory information has to be sorted out. That's one thing. The second thing is that electric vehicle manufacturers like Mercedes-Benz and Renault and Nissan, they need to decide on what those parameters, what the parameters would be of the vehicle to grid discharging. Is it only from 40% to 80%? What rate you can do that at? And then the price of the chargers, they're not exorbitantly high, but they need to come down as well. And then of course, there needs to be an inventory of electric vehicles out there on the roads. Elizabeth from Los Angeles, nice to meet you, fellow Angelino, asked, what energy systems are powered on the island with renewable? What besides transportation? Energy systems, meaning like, I think what your question is like people's houses, like the buildings in which the government folk work at. I know that there were a few main people using the fleet of vehicles. It was the people who worked at the utility, I think the police on the island, and I believe one more. And I know that there's one charger that directly is connected to the coffee machine at one of the buildings. So the vehicle's powering one of the coffee machines. Ryan, good to hear from you, Ryan. How many cars currently have bidirectional inverters that can support V2G? Seems like Nissan Leaf is one of the few currently. Are there soon more to come? Yeah. So the Nissan Leaf and the Renault, I think it's the Renault Zoe. That's the one that we put on that island there. Are there more to come? Yes. And there is funding out there for, there's a lot of movement in the bus space, transit and school buses. And right now there's a ton of funding out there for school buses to transition to electric vehicles. And one of the stipulations for the California Energy Commission is that those buses have to be V2G capable. So buses are now soon to come. And then recently VW announced that their vehicles will be V2G capable. And there was something that came out today that I saw that it's kind of like rumors around the peripheral, but it seems like there are breadcrumbs leading up to Tesla being able to be able to do this. Adria, nice to see you. What is the state of V2G in the market today? Are there many companies working on this? There's a handful of companies working on this, but it's a good question. V2G is, in my opinion, a few years away. I think the regulatory nature, the market economics, and the automotive manufacturers have some things to do before this can be something where you plug in and it works. So I would be weary of anyone saying that this is a commercial technology ready for 2021. I think certainly in pilots it's happening, just as you saw on that video, but it might be a few years. And that's probably an optimistic look too. Eric, are there any V2G pilots with public transit buses beyond passenger EVs? Certainly with school buses, but I don't know of public transits, partially because they operate quite often. You kind of want to sweat the asset that you have if you have a transit bus. School buses are perfect because they operate twice a day. They pick up in the morning, they drop off in the afternoon, and then they're sitting around, especially during the middle of the day when they can soak up the solar. And then at 6 p.m., 7 p.m., they should be back, and then can discharge from the grid. Mike, good to hear from you. How much does a bidirectional home charger cost plus additional installation costs? My home charger costs about $1,000 to install with a friends and family discount from an electrician. That's always nice. And hooking up directly to my home solar sounds even more complex. Yeah. Okay, so there's a home charger. There's one called by, I think it's called Ocasio. And then there's one by, I think it's called Wallbox. And I don't know the pricing, but I think it's around $5,000. And then there's also an interesting company that just raised a bunch of funding called span.io that will kind of control all of this for the home. And I've heard something around the block that, well, not I heard, I've had conversations with Sunrun, and they would like to move into this space. But however tough it might be to get electric vehicles such as school buses to sell into the grid, it's going to be, just as hard for a home. But a sort of microgrid type functionality in which a vehicle could just back up a school or just back up a home, kind of, if you might have seen in the last wave of fires in California, you might have seen viral videos of like the whole all the power's out at a block except for one house that has a power wall, and he's like serving drinks in his garage with like music and stuff. So like that sort of functionality could work with your vehicle. You could back up your home, but selling into the grid, it will be a while. So I think it's around $5,000, but you can look up those companies. Cam, how are we doing on time?
Let's go ahead and do one or two more. Let's just try to cut it at 12:30. So we got 4 minutes. Okay.
Charlie says that when you buy a Zoe in Europe, you don't get access to it via G capability. That's right. That's part of the OEMs needing to figure out, because they don't want you to use it right now and void the warranty. There have to be strict parameters around the discharging. So you don't want to go from 0% battery to 100% to 0 at 350 kilowatts, because you're going to degrade your battery real fast. But if you go from like 40% to 80% and at a certain rate, 20 kilowatts, whatever it may be, then you're actually going to ensure that the life of the battery is longer. And then the last question, Abe, thanks for this presentation. Thanks for being here. Do you know benefits from the V2G services? Is it the car owner themselves or a third party? Yeah, so kind of the last question that I was talking about with Mike, there are two scenarios. One is just islanding, is what they call it in the microgrid world, where you just back up your own house or school or maybe community in some sense, if it's on its own microgrid. And then that provides a lot of value, especially as climate disasters start to pick up, like fires, and you might not have power for a while. So that's one scenario. And then the other scenario is discharging energy back into the grid. There's a number of ancillary grid services like frequency, I think it's frequency containment response, and other things like that. And that, like I said, will take some time for the market to figure out all the specifics. But yeah, there's a number of ancillary services related to charging and discharging. Thanks everyone for listening.
Awesome, thank you so much though. Really enjoyed, that was the first time that I've got to hear that talk, really enjoyed it. All right, so we are at 12:28 here, everyone, and I hope you enjoyed that. Thanks for asking such great questions. I felt like I was able to learn a lot from what you guys were asking. So we are going to shift into the first breakout section here. I'm going to paste the breakout prompt. So the first prompt for this first discussion, again, we're going to jump into rooms of 4 to 5 people. So the first question is, if you own an EV, describe your experience of what that's been like. And if you're like myself and you don't own an EV, describe what the barriers to entry have been that have held you back. And maybe a little bit about what that experience is like, of perhaps wanting to, but either not being quite ready or whatever those circumstances may be. So yeah, again, if you own one, describe your experience of what it's been like. If you don't, what has that experience been like? So that's the prompt. We're gonna go ahead and send you all out into breakout rooms here. It's gonna be 8 minutes, and I'll send you a little notification at the halfway mark, and you'll also receive one when there's a minute left. So bear with me just a second here. It's perfect. All right, everyone, I'll see you in a bit. Enjoy in there. Welcome back, everyone. See, folks are still making their way back in here. All right, welcome back. I'm sort of envious of you. I was sitting out here in the main room, sort of wishing that I was with you guys in one of these breakout rooms, but someone's got to do that, right? No, it's good to have you guys back. I hope that was. I'm looking forward to hearing about what kind of conversation came up. Yeah, so before we hop into the next breakout, I'd love to hear any takeaways from that initial conversation that you just were having. For example, what were the barriers to entry that people mentioned? I can say, yeah, so if you could all type into the chat, or some of you, if you want to share anything that struck you from the conversation that was just happening. I'd love to get some insight into what you guys were chatting about. I can say, speaking from my own experience, I drive a traditional combustion engine vehicle, and I feel a tension around it. I would love to go electric, but there's sort of an economic constraint for me. There's the fact that I really like my car, like I like my truck. I'm not sure if any electric pickup trucks, that's something that sticks out to me as well. Let's see, Kevin says, oh yeah, lacking specific features that he wants in a car, for example, 4x4. Yeah, I feel similarly, totally get that. Cheyenne said, important portrayal of how affordability plays into access to clean energy sources and how important incentives and policy are when it comes to increasing access. The economic element there resonates. Charlie, the need for a car right now probably brings to light that we don't maybe drive as much as possible. Zoheb, already owning a car. Yep, I'm in the same boat. Adria, a hesitancy to go fully electric. She's currently using a hybrid because of potential lack of infrastructure. Another great one, something I've thought a lot about as well. Well, thank you so much, everyone, for sharing. I'll go ahead and introduce the second prompt here, and we'll jump into the next breakout section. So prompt number 2 is to share an example of a local renewable energy or renewable transportation initiative that excites you. It could be in your community or a community you've seen. I'm going to paste this into chat and repeat it real quick. So share an example of a local renewable energy or transportation initiative that excites you. It could be either in your community or a community that you've seen. We're about to do this. You guys ready? All right, we're going for it. I'll see you soon. Well, hey, here's the prompt. The three of us can have our own breakout room. This is great because otherwise I'm missing out on these things. So for context, Chris, the folks who are with us today are in breakout rooms right now, and they're having a short conversation of, the prompt was to share an example of a local renewable energy or transportation initiative that excites you in your community or a community that you've seen. And I'll let you kick us off if you'd like to.
Oh, sure. Me?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I happen to be from Columbus, Ohio. So we have we won a grant of the, I forget what it was, Future City Challenge or something like that. So we do have a couple of autonomous vehicles downtown that's running like a short little loop by this by a little future mobility showcase center.
Cool.
So we have that. And there was also, I don't know what the status of it is, but there's also an initiative to get low cost, it's supposed to be autonomous, but it's not there yet, transport from low income neighborhoods for health services. So to really try to benefit the infant mortality and help out the folks who wouldn't necessarily make it to doctor's appointments.
Mm-hmm.
So that's pretty exciting. That's cool.
Those both sound like awesome initiatives.
Mm-hmm.
I know that some of the folks here are part of a group called the Clean Energy Leadership Institute, and they just recently, I'm just going to send halfway warning. Just sending a message to everyone here. Okay, so those sound like awesome initiatives. Yeah, the CLI group, they just did a webinar on sustainability and specifically the inequality element, which reminds me a little bit of that healthcare and underserved communities and stuff. So that sounds really cool. How about you, Tim? Did you want to share? Unmute you here. Is there a renewable energy or transportation initiative that excites you?
This is less of a local one, but I'm sure earlier this year we're all aware that what I'm really excited about is kind of like testing the EV industry's move away from cobalt batteries, I would say, because of all of the kind of bad press they were getting from the sourcing and things like that. And I think that's a very good step because it's also going to help with efficiency as well. So I would say that's one of the big things that I would say is very exciting.
That does sound exciting. Could you describe a little bit about the problem with the cobalt batteries and or what the replacement batteries or materials are that are better?
Well, the main thing was that it was the sourcing because most of the cobalt comes from either China or the DRC, right? And so some of the sourcing practices, it's not clear if they're a little less than ethical, particularly in the DRC's case, where there are a lot of instances of child labor being used at the cobalt mines. And so I think the move away from it is very good for the industry in the sense that before that, I think there was a lot of potential outcry coming out about making sure that the renewable and kind of EV industry does not repeat a lot of the kind of bad, quote unquote, bad business practices of other investors in other industries who tend to have to source their materials from low income countries. And so I think this is a very good step because it'll be a lot better press and kind of show that it's not just sustainability from the environmental standpoint, but it's also just kind of the social and governance side of it as well. And I think it will push. I think it will really support a lot of the this kind of new idea of whatever stakeholder capitalism, right? The idea that, you know, you need to think about more than just the bottom line. You have to think about where how your materials are sourced, how you know, not just treat your workers, but also, you know, the stakeholders in the area where you're getting your sourcing, things like that.
Yeah, it sounds, I'd love to read up on that. Chris, are you familiar with this issue at all?
Yeah. Actually, I had read something fairly recently, like in the last couple of weeks or so, about that. Must have been a recent breakthrough in battery tech. I have quite a bit of exposure to it. I work for an automation company, and we build manufacturing lines. And recently, we've done a lot for automotive batteries, EV batteries, a little bit of fuel cell work, but not a whole lot. But yeah, even in the fuel cell stack, there's cobalt and lots of rare earth stuff, lots of things that you get from parts of the world that yeah, just like Tim was saying, it's questionable.
Yeah, fair enough. That's a fascinating topic. I'd love to, Tim, I'd love to read up on that. If there's an article by chance that you know of that I can find somewhere, it'd be really interesting to learn more about that topic. Same to you, Chris, if you've got any info on that. Okay, guys, thank you. I'm gonna let everyone back in now. So I'm gonna mute you guys up again if you don't mind. Appreciate it.
Okay.
Good chatting with you guys.
Yeah, good talk.
Tim, if there's a article that you can share on that, I'd love drop it in the chat. I'd love to read up on it. Thanks, guys. Welcome back. Looks like everyone's trickling in here. So I was pretty excited this time. We had a Chris joining us late, and I got to have my own little breakout room. So that was pretty exciting. And Tim Cascow as well somehow didn't get assigned into a room, so he ended up with me, and we had our own little breakout. So it was awesome. So let's see. From here, I would love to do the same thing. I'd love to hear in the chat what kind of local renewable energy or transport initiatives came up while y'all were in the breakout rooms. In our room, Tim was talking about he's excited about the transition away from cobalt as a material in some of our batteries and towards more sort of ethical practices related to the materials that are being extracted and used in batteries. And thought that was pretty interesting as well. Chris was sharing about, let's see, Kevin said, oh, Zoheb brings up Masdar City in Abu Dhabi. That place looks so cool. I believe we wrote a Cleantech Rising article about that one a couple years ago, and it looks like a magical place I'd love to visit. Kevin says, high-speed electric rail from Denver to the Rocky Mountains. Charlie, Tesla World Battery Day. World Battery Day? We'll announce that. Zoheb, EV rentals at airports facilitated by the city government. Very cool. Well, it looks like there was some good conversation happening. So, okay, so it's 12:56. I want to be respectful of everyone's time here. My hope was that we could do like a screenshot group photo. Could I just see a little show of hands if that would be okay with everyone if I were to take a screenshot? Oh, awesome. Okay, cool. I'm gonna try to snap one or two, and I'll let you know when, so we can all kind of wave at the camera here. Okay. All right. Let's give a little wave. I'm gonna get us a little screenshot. Thank you so much for being here. Awesome. Okay, cool. So before we wrap up here, we've got just a couple minutes left. I wanted to let you know, Zoheb, if you would type into the chat how people could connect with you after today, if they're interested in learning more about Mobility House, following up with you about anything related to vehicle to grid technology. Looks like he's got his Twitter handle in there at Humphrey Zogart. And I think he'll be dropping his email in there as well. Wanted to let you all know that we are going to be doing this on about a monthly basis. So our plan is to host Cleantech Live #2 next month on Friday, June 19th. Our guest speaker is going to be Adria Wilson and Eric Parker, who happen to be with us today. They're founders of the BEAM project, which is helping to coordinate crowdfunding for clean technology companies. So that's pretty exciting. We're looking forward to hearing from them. Also just wanted to acknowledge that we hope that you're all doing well during the COVID time. I know a lot of folks are having a hard time, whether it be emotionally, economically. We recognize that, yeah, a lot of folks might be having a hard time right now, and we just wanted to say we wish you well. We're really happy that we got to spend some of this time together here today. It means a lot to us. So that concludes our show. We are going to take a quick water break, a quick bathroom break, and we're gonna do, for anyone that wants to stick around, if any of you do happen to stick around, in about 5 minutes or so, we're gonna do a little screen share tour of the online community called the Uprising that Kevin and myself have been building, and it's a place that we envision is somewhere that people like us can connect after these Cleantech Live events and kind of extend the support and the connection and the discourse that's taking place here beyond these hour-long events, because we know they're short and we know a lot of interesting conversations get cut short. So I'm gonna call it there. Thank you all so much for coming. I'm gonna, yeah, like I said, we can take a quick water break. I'm gonna turn my camera off for just a couple minutes, and then we'll be back and we'll do a little site tour for those of you who stick around. So thanks everyone. Hope you have a great day. Kevin, Zoheb, thanks for speaking, man. Kevin, you've been integral in making this all happen, so thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, you guys.